All right, Amanda, we ready to go?
We are. Yeah, we're just about ready to get started. So it's 7 o'clock now, and we want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for this webinar to kick off Media Literacy Week. We're really excited to start talking about media literacy in a more formal way as the state of Rhode Island adopted an exploration through this advisory group to begin exploring incorporating media literacy into our schools. And so we're going to talk about what that might look like in your context, and really just ways in which we can embed more media literacy. And what is it? You know, sometimes teachers think they're not really doing it. They don't know what it is, and it's this obscure thing. But really, for us tonight, we're going to try to talk and tackle a little bit of those complications, concerns that teachers have. So, Pam, you want to?
Yeah, okay. And I just want to ask people again, in case you didn't hear it, it's best if you mute. That's in the upper right-hand corner of your picture screen. If you go to your picture and mute yourself until you're ready to talk, it cuts out any background noise, so it makes it a little easier for our recording. Okay, so I am going to try sharing my screen so that we can go through the agenda. I want to welcome you all. It looks like we have 10, 12 people here with us tonight, which is great. So let's see if this works. Are you seeing that? No.
Hey, did you want some squash?
Hey, Pam, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we got you. Are you there?
Yep.
Okay, can you see
Yep,
me?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, and Amanda, can you see my slides?
Yep, we're good. Yep, you're good to go, Pam.
Excellent. Okay. So once again, just if you're not talking at the moment, if you can mute your mic, it would help with audio. So we welcome you all. We want to start, as you can see on the agenda here, with introductions. We want to know who you are and what your role is, why you're concerned about media literacy. We have to keep it short since we've got so many people on the call, and we have an agenda to get through for the hour, so we don't have a lot of time together this first time. Dr. Mark Garso, the superintendent from Westerly, is going to give us a context of why a school administrator feels that media literacy is necessary for college and career readiness. Amanda and I are going to talk about definitions and problems of practice so that we're all on the same page in what we're talking about. Brian Jennings from Narragansett, an elementary school in Narragansett, is going to talk about his work with students and the products that they're making in media land. And if we have time, which I'm kind of doubting we might, we're going to look at some of the Flipgrid responses and then going to just launch into our roundtable discussion. And John Gold is going to, who's here with us today from Moses Brown, is going to talk about his media literacy integration in Rhode Island. And if we have time, we'll also share what we've learned about how other states are integrating media literacy through the Media Literacy Now national update that we just received. And then talk about next steps on how to continue to engage and create action steps for our presentation to RIDE. And brainstorm a little bit about who are the stakeholders we need to be talking to, who are potential advocates. And then maybe we can talk about
last leg lift, my love.
Starting a resource list so that we can all share books, films, conferences, speakers, anything that will help us in this journey. Okay?
Because I'm on this call.
Okay. So let's actually start with the.
You want me to move it to the bedroom?
Start with the introductions. So
okay.
I'm Pam Stager. Could I ask you to mute your mic there?
I'll go in the bedroom.
Thank you. So I'm Pam Stager. I'm a senior researcher and writer with the Media Education Lab, and I've been interested in media literacy since first taking a scholars program with Dr. Renee Hobbs at the Media Literacy Scholars Program when she was at Babson College. I come to it from a prevention background. So I was interested in how kids were getting messages about the various things I was trying to help them prevent, like substance abuse and teen pregnancy and STDs and things like that, and violence. I'll leave it at that. And Amanda, you want to go next?
Sure, I'm Amanda Murphy. I'm a social studies teacher at Westerly High School. I'm also our senior project coordinator, and I started to explore media literacy when I first attended the Summer Institute, URI Summer Institute in Digital Literacy. I really began thinking about the way that our students are consuming messages and how they can not only just consume, but like how they can dissect that information and then become really purposeful creators of content themselves, and how they can begin to contribute to the conversation as opposed to just consuming and passively taking on information. So that's really where I came at this, and I have continued to incorporate media literacy into my classroom and context since then. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Mike Trophy, am I seeing you there?
Yes, you are.
Can you introduce yourself and your role in all of this?
My name is Mike Trophy. I a retired teacher, but I have an office in the Westwork School Department, and I became interested in media literacy through the efforts of Erin McNeil from Massachusetts, and she and Dr. Hobbs would kind of work together to get, and others to get legislation passed so that we could become a viable way of getting media literacy into our schools. I would like to have my role as trying to help people to get things into motion.
And Mike was very significant in getting the legislation into motion. Thank you. Renee, are you still with us? Okay.
Yes, I am. Here I am. I'm Renee Hobbs. I'm delighted to be here this evening. Sorry, I can't be on screen, but I'm really excited to see so many new voices and perspectives from media literacy leaders across Rhode Island. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Renee. Dr. Garceau, are you there?
I am.
Can you go next?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I am really new to this conversation. Frankly, I was roped into this by Amanda. Some rich conversations that she and I had this summer as I joined Westerly, and from a superintendent's perspective, as a father, as somewhat of a political junkie, I think that the media literacy issue is a big one. Again, I don't have any answers. I have some concerns and some problems of practice that I'm interested in exploring and learning from the others that are here tonight.
Great, thank you. Brian Jennings, you there?
I am here, yes. So I became involved with wanting to communicate about media literacy before I even knew it was called media literacy. I used to work in the news media in Providence and Boston. And then when I made the switch to education, one of my primary goals was to talk about that with kids. And it's blossomed since then due to my association with Renee and the Media Education Lab. So I think it's essential.
Thanks. John Gold, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm John Gold. I teach, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
okay. I teach 7th and 8th grade history at Moses Brown School in Providence, which is a Quaker independent school. I've been here for 12 years. I teach American history, and then my 8th grade course is called Global Thinking. And in those classes, we read a ton of media. And I also work with my students pretty closely on their critical thinking and critical reading skills, which I think overlaps with a lot of what we're talking about here with media literacy. I was also roped into doing this by Amanda.
Thank you. Okay, did I see April? Is April Leach here? Unmute, mute. Maybe she's left us.
No,
Nope. There?
I'm here.
Okay, can you introduce yourself, April?
Hi there. April Leach. I'm here in South Florida. I'm a literacy coach and I at a public charter high school that teaches filmmaking, animation, and performing arts. So I'm particularly interested in the power of student media making to develop critical thinking, because these are students who have all been born in this millennium, and it's natural for them to create, but to do that with caution and much forethought.
Great, thank you. Who else do we have with us? Did I see a Tasha at one point?
And don't forget Mary Moen and Lori Huntley.
Oh, great. Okay, I don't have as many thumbnail pictures up as I'd like to. So if people can just jump in and introduce themselves at this point.
So I'm Tasha. Hi.
Hi, Tasha.
I am actually in the graduate school for library information services through URI, and I am emergency certified. So I currently work at 2 Providence libraries, elementary schools, as a library media specialist. Before that, I was a teacher in Providence for the past 13 years. So 15 years in the district, just a different role now. I left the classroom because my passion was always the reading and the sharing of stories, and with all of, being in a Pearson world and being told what to do and that kind of thing, I just was losing my own passion for it. And so I went into the library role thinking here I could share my favorite part of the day with the books and the love for reading. And I'm really finding out how important the media piece is. And, not growing up with media and now trying to teach not only my students, even though it's elementary, but also the faculty and their parents about the importance of being able to look at what you're viewing and, and be able to see what is accurate and what you should trust and how to evaluate that and what's good, and not all sources are created equal. And so really just I'm here to learn from a lot of brilliant minds tonight. And so that's me.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Tasha.
Mary and Julie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, I'm Mary Moen, and I was a school librarian at Charahoe High School for many years. And I got my PhD, and Renee Hobbs was my major professor, and I got introduced to media literacy, which is very a close cousin to what librarians do a lot with information literacy. Right now, I'm the coordinator of the school library media program at URI's Graduate School of Library and Information Studies. And Tasha is one of my most brilliant students, and she's always willing to learn. And I'll have to say that I really think school librarians are in a key position to really help, as Tasha said, not only teach students, but teach the teachers of how we can evaluate and critically think about news media and media production, going along with Brian's theme. So that's me. Thanks.
Great, thanks. And is Julie with us as well? Julie Coro here? Okay, who else is here that I have?
Lori Huntley, hi.
Oh, Lori, hi.
Hi, I'm a teacher at West Warwick High School. I teach juniors and seniors. I've been there since 1995. I started out, when I started teaching the Writing 104 class at URI at the high school in the concurrent enrollment program, Frank Romanelli has sort of been roping me into all these courses. So I've been enjoying them. I took the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy last summer. And I originally just wanted to keep up with the kids, and now I'm seeing that there's a little bit more to it.
Thank you, Lori.
Indeed, thanks. Is there anyone we haven't heard from yet?
Tamitha, let's hear from you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tamitha Hoskins. I am a former classroom high school English teacher. I currently work for IXL Learning. we sell educational software, and I sell to educators in Rhode Island. I've actually met Amanda through Highlander Institute. I don't know if you remember me. Nevertheless, I sell in Rhode Island. I am very interested in media literacy and learning what the conversation is like among educators there, so I can be more informed about what you're looking at when I'm talking with you.
Did I see Haley Dunn, the new PhD, who's written a dissertation about media literacy?
Hi, Renee. Yes, I'm here. I know Renee. She was on my dissertation committee, which I just defended in October. And Renee's actually the person who really got me interested in media literacy. What I've been doing is looking at how we can use media literacy for public health prevention, specifically as it relates to substance prevention. So getting kids to become informed consumers when they're on social media, as far as learning how to identify risky content that they see online and being able to deconstruct it in an effective way.
Great.
And what about Denise Oliveira?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I couldn't tell. Yeah, I'm kind of following in the Frank Romanelli footsteps here. I teach the Writing 104 course at Westerly High School, and he's quite a dynamic leader. And I did attend this Summer Institute for Digital Literacy 2016, and it was remarkable. Amanda, I think we need a field trip to New York City to look at those schools. But as an English teacher at Westerly High School, I will say I absolutely feel that the teaching of rhetoric to better understand what is out there in the world of media is important. And so protecting our kids, helping them understand what they're hearing, how they're hearing it, and what to do with what they're reading and hearing. So very excited to be part of this group.
Thanks for joining us, Denise. And Mike Klein, are you out there?
I am. I just got home. So yeah, I'm new to this conversation. I was brought into the conversation by Amanda as she brought so many people in. Currently, I am an education strategy specialist at the Highlander Institute. So I get to go in and support teachers and principals and school district leaders around blended and personalized learning and project-based learning. I got into this work specifically when I was in New York City teaching. I did a lot of work around critical media literacy with my 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And then when I went out to High Tech High in San Diego, did a lot more work around kind of ethical production of content in addition to just critical consumption. And now I'm most interested specifically in issues of digital privacy, safety, and security. So around issues of like fake news and thinking specifically about how we can help students understand and kind of make visible the structures of the internet and all the different ways that their information is kind of used throughout the media ecosystem.
Well, Mike, thank you.
That it?
And I just want to acknowledge Juan. Thank you for joining us. I see you jumped in on the notes or the chat section. So thank you so much for joining us tonight as well.
All right. Okay. Ready to move on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. So we're hoping to hear from Dr. Mark Garceau from Westerly with his ideas at this point in time about, from his administrator perspective, of why media literacy might be helpful in college and career readiness. Mark?
Sure. Well, thank you. I'm humbled. You folks know a heck of a lot more about this than I do. But when I joined the conversation a couple of weeks ago, there were some things that I was thinking about, and I'm always looking for opportunities to connect the dots. And I think where I would start was, as a superintendent, if we really want our kids to be truly college and career ready, and we really want them to do what we always talk about, like really become lifelong learners, I think it's critical that we recognize that they're always learning, that it doesn't happen from 9 to 3, and they're always pulling from far more sources than any textbook that we could ever put in front of them. They're like us in that, we all learn that way. We learn from books, we learn from documentaries, from our Twitter feeds, from what we see on the web, from popular media, etc. And if we have an interest or we go down a particular rabbit hole, all of those different sources inform our knowledge base. And I think we need to just recognize that that's how kids learn, especially now. We draw on all of those to build our knowledge, to shape our thinking. And it's about, in regards to everything from history to politics to philosophy, etc. Unless, of course, we did decide to just take what was in that textbook that somebody put in front of us as if it was the gospel and think that we now know it all. And that closed mindset issue might be a whole nother angle, because we'll often, we recognize we only seek out sources a lot of times that confirm what we think we already know and believe. So for me, the media literacy conversation also aligns with what we're expected to do now in terms of instructional shifts to support kids in success with the Common Core, for example. Those instructional shifts require that we give kids regular practice with complex, content-rich text, that they are reading, writing, and speaking grounded in evidence from text, and that they're building knowledge through content-rich, complex text. So building any kind of evidence-based knowledge can't happen, from my standpoint, unless we know how to be critical consumers of, and as Amanda pointed out to me, and I absolutely agree, critical consumers of, and eventually contributors to, the massive amounts of information that are out there and coming our way each day. And I think this applies both to factual and opinion-based information, because even reasoned opinion ought to be logically defendable. So we and our kids, I think, can't hope to build solid bases of knowledge on the backs of unverified news or, quote unquote, alternative facts, which is something that didn't even exist a year ago. It's crazy where we've come. And we ought to feel comfortable, I think, and we ought to feel confident enough to ask for sources of evidence. We ought to be able to push back. It used to drive me crazy all the time when I would hear from people in graduate courses, or even in my dealings with teachers and parents now. They'll say, well, the evidence is clear that, and I'll say, what evidence specifically? And or the research is clear, and you get crickets. But I think that's okay to say, well, so where are you coming from with this perspective? So from there, we ought to be able to know enough to critically consider the intent behind the information that's coming our way, the perspectives, the credibility, the validity, and the potential biases of these sources. And then finally, for me, and then I'll be quiet, is obviously this whole issue of media manipulation is a very hot button topic. We can't escape it. Rumor, false information, and the rest have always existed, and segments of our populace have always been subject to that or fallen for it. But when government institutions can be undermined, when people's quality of life issues such as finance, healthcare, national security can be impacted, and when leaders use social media as a tool for informing, messaging, or deflecting, the need for media literacy may never have been more important. We simply have never seen such an absolute explosion of media bombardment or been subjected to this endless assault of the 24-hour news cycle. So in addition to developing media literacy so as to support kids' building of knowledge, explicitly teaching the fundamentals of fact-checking, of the importance of considering perspectives and bias, of the need to verify sources, and the developing the abilities to critically consider what's fueling the story behind the story may be the single best defense against our kids becoming victims of manipulation by propaganda, lies, and fake news. The skills, the dispositions, the habits of mind needed to create critical consumers of information, I think, can be explicitly taught, and some of the folks here tonight do that. They can be practiced, they can be developed, and as educators, we have a responsibility to our students if we hope to create those informed participants in a democratic society. So from my standpoint, again, as an educator, I think we've got real concerns, but we've got tremendous opportunities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. From your lips to Ride's ears. We'll save questions for now until we get into our roundtable discussion. So the next thing we're going to do, and Amanda, I'm hoping I have the latest version of this. If not, you might want to see if you can pull it up in case I don't.
Okay.
We're going to go now to, or maybe, yeah. So we will always want to start with definitions, and the definition that has been used since I think 1992, when the Aspen, a group of media literacy experts gathered at the Aspen Institute, came up with this very nice, concise, the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media in a variety of forms. But since that time, we realized that that short definition needed expanding. And so the one that the Center for Media Literacy is using now, and a lot of us, is a 21st century approach to education. Media literacy builds an understanding of the role of the media in society, as well as essential skills of inquiry and self-expression necessary for citizens of a democracy. And I think some of those elements were missing from the original definition, which is why it was felt that it needed to be expanded. I think it's important that we all understand and agree that the process of digital and media literacy includes all of these stages. That access, it seems strange to think that access of technology, it could be an issue when, you know, every 12-year-old we might know has their own mobile phone. And yet a lot of 12-year-olds don't have their own mobile phone, and they don't have a computer at home, or at school or the library is where they get access. And what does that mean for them? And how does that either help or hinder them in this technological world? And then once they have the access and they're used to consuming digital and other messages from all media, we have to give them the skills to analyze and evaluate those messages, as well as, and Brian Jennings will get into this, and hopefully others, they have to learn how to create, because the best way to understand how messages are produced is to produce them themselves. That's why English language arts teachers have always had kids write poems, not just read poems, and write short stories, not just read short stories. So we have to do the same with other kinds of messages as well. And then reflection is so important in the critical thinking process, and hopefully all of that will lead to action. As most of you know already, the 5 key questions of media literacy are about authorship, about techniques needed to attract and hold attention, about lifestyles, values, and points of view being represented, about how different people interpret messages differently, and always, always, always asking what's not in this message, what's a misunderstanding. And that leads us into the 5 concepts, key concepts. The questions that we use are the 5, but there are other people who use 7 questions or 10 questions. Most of them always come back to relating to one of these 5 concepts. Messages have economic and political power, and it's important to understand that. People interpret messages differently. Messages use different codes and conventions. And messages influence attitudes and behaviors, and messages are, or whatever that is, representation. It's being hidden from me and I can't remember. Okay, Amanda, this is you.
Yeah, so I think Dr. Garceau, you know, covered a lot in terms of the way in which media literacy really does tie really perfectly with everything that we need to be doing in terms of how to educate our students and how to get them to become more conscientious about what they're consuming and more thoughtful in the way that they create and contribute to the conversation. And like, you know, Pam had said, yeah, as English educators, you know, always analyzing a poem, does give students an opportunity to dissect it, but then the creation of the poem is where the application comes into play. And I think media literacy does a lot of those components as well. Media literacy, for me, why I think it's so critical is if you look at some of the statistics that are on the screen right now, and some research that was done by Common Sense Media over the last couple of years, we see that teens are spending about 9 hours a day on average on their screens, whether that be on their cell phones, whether it be on a computer screen or looking at watching television. But they're spending the time on those screens. And so I think that the misconception is that educators and parents think that because they have access to those devices and the screen, and that they really just understand what it is that they're seeing. It's a natural fit. I use it kind of like a car analogy. It's almost like saying that a student or kid can, because they've been riding in a car their entire lives, at 16, boom, they should automatically just know how to drive. But that's not what it is, and that isn't what happens. So what I think, as a parent for myself and also as an educator, it's my responsibility to get students and my children to really understand and comprehend what it is that they're seeing and point out some of those nuances. And so giving them the skills and taking the time in my class to give them the skills to dissect that information. With that being said, the other research that I have here on the screen is that while students do get a lot of their news from family and teachers, they prefer to get it from social media. And that study, again, was done by Common Sense Media in 2017. So if they prefer to get their information from social media, then we need to think about what are some of the intentions and when they're receiving that information. And what are they seeing when they look at those sound bites, when they're just scrolling through a Twitter feed or, looking at a Snapchat story? What kinds of sound bites of information are they getting, and are they really getting the whole picture? And I think media literacy is so important in getting students to see the whole picture. The one critical question that I absolutely love when we look at those 5 questions is, what is omitted from the message? Because I think that so many people's stories or so many angles are left out if we look at something on, from a surface perspective. And I had a student a few weeks ago who said something to me like, we were talking about, do we trust what is in our history textbooks? Can we really rely on that as the only form of information to tell the story of history? And he said, well, if it's in a book, then it must be. And I said, but what else is there, and what's being left out of that story that we really need to consider? And how can we look at other sources to find the story, not just what's in the text, but also in media and through narratives and other ways to find that information. So I think as educators, we have a responsibility to take the time, and sometimes, and I know the phrase, and it's used quite often, but to go slow to go fast. We take the time to really get students to dissect and delve into the media messages that they're consuming, so that as they evolve as learners and as citizens, they really understand what they're seeing, and they can look at it from multiple perspectives. So I'm going to kind of go through this, but then the next slide, Pam, is really just that I think all disciplines have an opportunity to teach media literacy, whether it's in a PE classroom, in a health classroom, in a math classroom. I was with an educator over the summer who was at a media literacy conference at the museum with me and John, and she was a math teacher. And she said, I know this is really weird for me to be here. But she was the oddball in the room. But she said, for me, I want students to be able to look at data. And I want them to look at statistics that they read when they're looking at articles and seeing, are those statistics true representations of what story they're trying to tell? When they're looking at news and they're watching the news stories on television, or if they're seeing something in a movie, are they really pulling apart some of the stats and the data that's in that? And so how can she, as a math educator, be able to get them to understand and interpret data and what role that plays in creating a media message? So I think that we all have a responsibility, but also we all have opportunities in our disciplines to teach media literacy.
Okay. So I think we're now heading into Brian Jennings. Do you want to talk a little bit about your work at your school?
Yeah, sure. So I teach at K through 4, technically preschool through 4th grade, elementary school here in Narragansett. And as I said earlier, my main interest developed as a result of my working in media. And even when I worked in media, it struck me that a lot of the people working in creating media don't really understand the power that's involved with it. A lot of the time you'll hear it talked about in conspiratorial tones and things, but a lot of it just boils down to time constraints or laziness. So my big consideration when I'm teaching it is to teach the kids, it's not so much about fake news. I know fake news has been really a big talking point in the past year, and it should be talked about, but I want to stress that it's not just the fake news you have to worry about. It's how information is presented. And I give kids examples. Yeah, I'm the only librarian in the school, so I will say I'm the best librarian in the school. Is that true? And we'll chat about that, and without fail, a couple of kids always realize, wait a minute, you're the only one in the school, so of course that's true. So it goes to that critical thinking that you all have been mentioning. As far as the creating of media, I think we need to move from using the word consume all the time and maybe use the word users of media. And one of the big ways to use media is through creating it. And like I think Mark said earlier, you're not going to gain a better understanding of how media and how all information is created than by actually doing it yourself. So I try to do a combination of things. We analyze various pieces of media. Occasionally, when I can come across a really good work of fiction that's based upon a real event, The Man Who Walked Between the Towers, we'll compare that book version with several other different versions of the story. Or another one is the Garbage Barge story, where we'll look at what's omitted and who's telling the story, why were things omitted. And then I try to bring that in when kids are producing stuff here in the library. So we have, we're lucky enough in Narragansett that we have really good equipment and really good software, but you don't need that for production. So along with teachers, we'll tie in media production with their curriculum and using technology as an alternative or just another choice. So one project we did was water conservation, and the third graders were offered the choice. You can write a report, you can create a diorama, you can make a poster, or you can create a multimedia project. And not everyone wanted to create the multimedia project, but those who did went on the following year in 4th grade to become leaders in creating and producing their own music. So I try to bring in the teachers as much as possible, and they're always trying to come up with ideas of how we can use this kind of stuff to kind of deepen the curriculum covering stuff. But also I provide some opportunities during recess and with an after-school group for kids to explore without having a predetermined outcome. So you want to try film, okay. We'll go through the process. Everyone has to go through the same basic training of what the shots are, how to capture footage, how to use audio, how to choose music. And as they're producing it, you can question, why did you choose to use this shot? And to tie into the manipulation of information rather than just fake news, let's look at how this different edit here or this different framing of a shot will change the message that you're sending to your viewer or your audience. It's really been powerful to see some kids who would have slid through the cracks after they've finished a project and sit and watch it and realize that they own it and they created it. You can almost see a steel come into their back as they sit up and understand, wow, this is something incredible. And I say it to be corny, but I tell them when we're starting, you are the masters of time and space. And that's what media makers are. They are the masters of time and space, and I'm sure they roll their eyes when I'm saying it at first. But as they age, my hope is that they will at some level realize, oh yeah, anybody who's creating this information using media is the master of it. I need to be aware of that, and I need to take power from that, and not just be a consumer. I really don't like the word consumer, but be an active user. Consumer, to me, is passive, and I want to empower kids to be more active and own media. So that's my story. It's been going very well so far. I have kids who give up recess. I have kids who line up to give up recess to do it. And I've got a very large group of students at this school and the middle school who come after school to work with me. And it's something fantastic. And you can start at the lowest level. All you really need is an iPad. And if anybody wants to contact me, I have lots of different ideas that they can try out or bounce around some ideas.
Great, Brian. Thank you. Amanda, I'm seeing that we're supposed to maybe do screening of Flipgrid responses now, but I think everybody but one of our Flipgrid people are here on the call. So I think I'd prefer to hear from them live. And I'm wondering if we want to give John Gold a chance to talk before we start the discussion so people can ask questions of any of the speakers. Does that make sense?
That sounds great.
John, are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be. I'll keep it brief because I also want to get to the discussion. But it's been really great hearing from folks so far. And I would say for me, we've done a couple things here at Moses Brown. Most recently, we organized a conference called Discerning Truth in a Post-Fact World. And so we, myself and then our librarian team and our director of Friends Education, we're a Quaker school. Our school motto is for the honor of truth. And so we sort of think deeply often about our responsibility to help students develop the tools for finding truth, and in particular, within Quaker practice, the idea of discerning truth as a community. So truth isn't something that I individually have access to or anyone has access to, that it lives within our sort of collective discernment. And the sort of Quaker pedagogy and practice and a lot of the media literacy work have, there's a lot of resonance between the two of them, since a lot of what we're thinking about is, I like whoever said before, the fake news is sort of, to me, it's like it's a misdirection. The actual issue is how do we help people figure out what's real? And the fake news is sexy and in the world today is talked about, but actually the bigger challenge is identifying what's true and what's real. So in my own work, in my own classroom, and a lot of what sort of led up to the conference, what I find to be a really useful approach, and I'll say this and then I'll let us get to the discussion, is I spend a lot of time thinking with my students, and this is going to sound sort of overly philosophical, but really what does it mean to know? What is knowledge? What does it mean to sort of on a deep philosophical and epistemological level, like what is knowing? And so Amanda's comment before about what's in the textbook or students sort of involved in the creation or production of knowledge are inevitably thinking about sort of how do I get what's in my head into someone else's head, or how does someone get what's in their head into my head, and how do we engage in that process together? So a lot of what I end up talking about with my students is the process we use for gathering evidence. My 7th graders can tell you, for example, what confirmation bias is. And so they'll say when they're gathering evidence for an essay, like, you know, I was really interested in this thesis, but I was wary of confirmation bias. So I went to these other sources to make sure that I wasn't just sort of following what I already thought, and instead was trying to stay open. And so we'll talk about letting the evidence convince you rather than manipulating the evidence to fit your viewpoint. And so I find that sort of by giving if Amanda's analogy of sort of students learning how to drive works, the way I approach it is sort of letting them figure out how the car works first. So really teaching them how their brains process information, how communities process information, why fake news works, why propaganda works. And we do that in American history, and then we do that in the current world in my global thinking class. So those are the kinds of things that I am thinking about. I guess I'll just give a plug to, because I write about this stuff a lot. In my Flipgrid video, I put a link to a piece I wrote last year called Teaching in the Post-Truth World, which lays out some of this stuff in more detail. But I also wrote a series for Teaching Tolerance called Learning How to Know in 2017 that sort of goes point by point through the mishmash version I just delivered. And now I will turn it over to the group.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, so we are 15 minutes away from ending this call, so we have a lot to fit in, but I really want to open this to everybody now. Unmute your mics and jump in, ask questions, share what you're doing. Mary, I don't know if you've shared much about Media Smart Libraries yet. But I really encourage people to ask your questions now. This is a good time to do that, or to share something that you're working on, that you're excited about.
Yeah, so if there's an activity that you've done in your classrooms in helping students, decipher some of this information and become more active in what they're reading and what they're seeing, please contribute to the conversation, because really, ultimately, our goal is to try to gather as many pieces of evidence for best practices that are happening around the state to begin to inform the way that media literacy can become more of a norm within our schools, as opposed to something that's kind of on the fringes or might be on an outside in its independent class.
So I'll jump in. This is Renee Hobbs. I've been having a lot of fun with my undergraduate students simply by giving them the choice of how to represent their knowledge in my courses. So students get opportunities, of course, to write an academic essay in my course, but they also get the opportunity to create a podcast, design an infographic, develop a website, make a video animation, a vlog, a screencast, or even a series of memes. And what I've been finding is that students' creativity is ignited when they have choice, and that their ability to represent their ideas using image, language, and sound seems to result in better quality ideas being advanced. So that's one best practice that seems to be working in my work with undergraduate students.
And that works with, this is Brian, I have fourth graders now, imagine, because almost everyone here is a teacher. I have fourth graders who are coming and bugging me to do research to create little special report newscasts. We just did a Halloween one, and I have two groups who competed. So now one's going to do Thanksgiving and one's going to do Christmas. And because of their age, they're not getting terribly in depth. But if it continues along that path, just imagine what that choice has awakened in them, to where when I was in fourth grade through graduate school, I didn't want to do research ever.
So I can, oh, sorry, go ahead, April.
No, is that Tasha?
Yeah, go ahead, I'll go after you.
Well, as the literacy coach, what I'm working on with my faculty is having every single teacher, no matter what they're teaching, have their students create media as a demonstration of comprehension. And while that might not be technically media literacy per se, the students are able to learn to employ the hard skills that they learn at our school in filmmaking and animation and performing arts to create media. And all of the teachers also have the Renee Hobbs little the paper that clicker that has those questions for the students to pay attention to as they're creating. What is my audience? You know, what is omitted? How am I crafting my message here? So that's been kind of interesting for me to see how a math teacher that speaks in a monotone while delivering instruction, for example, then has to adjust when their students are animating the concepts that they've been teaching them.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely media literacy.
Oh, good. Tasha.
So yeah, I've definitely been playing around with different things, even with like my first graders, with just something simple as creating their own Google Slides to represent themselves, dragging in pictures, videos, that kind of thing, just to show even at such a young age, this is how I can represent myself and you know, show others a little bit about me. My thing was more going to, and I completely agree with the choice. Even my fifth graders, my fourth and fifth graders, I had select topics of like cyberbullying or, you know, surfing the web and that kind of thing. And then as a group, they have to decide how they're going to present that. And I told them out of my 5 classes, we'll vote on the best cyberbullying and the best like surfing the web and the best, you know, coding like presentations. And then we'll put them on our school website as like the model. And they are just thrilled with that kind of thing. But I wanted to go a different route and just say, you know, going into, you know, the Media Smart. So being a classroom teacher for 13 years before getting into this program really offered very little media literacy, training, professional development, anything at all. And now that I'm in this role, at least in my district, I still feel as though there is very limited trainings. In fact, for Mary's class, I had to look up a technology plan, couldn't find one for Providence, this huge district. The librarians don't know anything about it. There's a blueprint for it that hasn't happened. And in this 464-page blueprint, it says that only 35% of the librarians in our district actually use or know how to use technology. That's scary and it's sad and I wonder why. And then I think there are no trainings, and Media Smart or something like that offers all of these opportunities. I'm lucky that I saw this. Amanda, again, you know, the glue in between all of this, pulling everyone together, it seems, tweeted it. And then I saw this and thought, wow, this is somewhere I want to be to listen to these people, because how else do you fill your bucket and learn about these things? Someone this evening just said like how last year fake news wasn't a thing. It's constantly evolving. And so with all of these new things, how do we keep abreast of them if there aren't trainings or, you know, things like this where we're pulling people in to feed off of each other and inspire each other and get these ideas so that it's not just, you know, one more thing added to our plate. So I don't know if that was helpful, but that's just what I wanted to share.
Yeah, no, I don't think, I think worrying about it, one more thing added to the plate, I think I understand that, but think of it more as the best cheeseburger.
Oh no, you're misunderstanding me. You're misunderstanding me. What I mean is that you need to we need more trainings. We need more.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like
so obviously the Media Education Lab is a great resource, and Mary with Media Smart Libraries. If you wanted to know more about filmmaking, there's a group called Give Me 5, which is run through the Rhode Island State Council of the Arts. That's a really good resource. They're building lessons and do a lot of work with teens. The Providence Children's Film Festival is also another resource for that type of thing.
And I think if I can jump in here and say, this is a perfect segue into going into our next agenda item, which is next steps. So Tasha, what I hear you saying loud and clear is we need teacher training in media literacy. So that's one of the things that we can do. I am very interested in maybe bringing some pressure to bear on RIDE from the community as well, because I think we've all probably had that experience where we talk about we drop the term media literacy and people's eyes glaze over, and we know we have to explain it to them, and then they go, oh wow, oh my gosh, that's so needed. So I really feel as though we need to do this with community groups and organizations and parents as well, because I think those kind of places can also start pressuring the Department of Education for integration. other ideas about what we can be doing and where we should be focusing our efforts?
For me, I think I'm most interested in ways in which teachers that don't typically have access or don't consider themselves disciplines that would typically incorporate media literacy practices, ways to kind of get some of those fringe disciplines to be educated. So I think I put down over in the notes there for us for some next steps trainings, but also, just educate. But who does that, who are we identifying that we want to educate in terms of our community members, but also within our schools? Who are the people that are kind of on the outside that are looking in and saying, what is that? Does that really apply to me? Am I actually doing it? And ways that we can continue to inform others that are on that outside to kind of pull them in and begin to incorporate it into the classrooms and contexts.
That is such a great point. That is such a great point, Amanda. And if we're making a list of things, then I would also add, I think that student voices can be really powerful. And I think that your students can explain why media literacy is important and describe how they are strengthening their knowledge and skills. So I wonder if it might be possible to gather some voices of our own students and have them explain the value of the learning experiences they're having.
I was thinking along those lines. At my kids' elementary school, we'd have this family arts night that focused and showcased the student artwork, and we also brought in experts and things. And so if schools had like a family media literacy night, I think that could be really great. Gets the parents in and experts, and it starts the conversation. They see their kids stop motion animations or whatever I think that would be a good thing to do.
I'm going to jump in. Denise Oliveira, did you have some information or some thoughts to add in?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because it's not lighting up on my end. Yeah, I had a surprising thing happen this year that made me realize the power of the classroom, and that was I was teaching a unit on success, and it seemed like every article that I gave the kids, they flowed in the direction of the idea of the article. They went with whatever opinion was in front of them, which gave me an opportunity to teach them, you don't need to agree with your teacher. You need to kind of form your own opinions. And I realized the power of teachers is pretty tremendous, and I think we need to be very, very careful with that power to make sure that the kids are getting all angles and understanding how to get all angles. And I like to think of Aristotle, everything is an argument. And if everything is an argument, and Dan Cohen, Vermont philosopher, says the goal of argumentation is to walk away having learned something, not having won something. It really provided me an opportunity to tell the kids, or to encourage the kids, don't buy what I'm selling, challenge. And I think that's a big goal of media literacy, is to challenge what you're hearing, not just buy it. And that's all I want to say.
I love that. In that argument, hopefully what will come about is it fosters conversation.
Yes.
And I always encourage my kids when I'm teaching them about trademarks or branding, I always encourage them to respectfully ask me where I'm getting my information about any of this stuff. Because you're right, to stand up there and say question authority and then not invite them to question your authority, I think is counterproductive.
And we're also at this point asking them to question reality, which is the next step beyond the questioning authority. Speaking of authority, I don't want to end our time before asking Dr. Garceau, how many other superintendents in Rhode Island may feel the same way you do? Or have you, as superintendents, as a group, ever talked about media literacy? And is there a way into that group for us?
I haven't been part of any of those conversations, but I think there's certainly a way in. The superintendents gather and we talk about trends, and I think we'd rather be on the forefront than than have things brought to us from RIDE. We'd rather be part of the planning and the decision making and the building of the sense of urgency around that. So I'd have to think on that, but I think there are definitely inroads that we could make.
Okay, great. We will get back to you for sure. It's 7:59. I want to respect the fact that we only said this would be an hour. I want to thank everyone for coming. I'm sorry if you had something to say, then you didn't get a chance to say it. Please go on our website, sign up there, go to the Flipgrid, tweet us and tag us on the Facebook page and Twitter, and keep in touch. This was great. Thank you so much, and happy Media Literacy Week.